Hi everyone, can you all hear me? Can you just give me a green tick please, if you can all hear me please? I can see that most of you can hear me. Just wondering. Response, and I'll just carry on kind of the introduction section. So thank you for all coming along today. Nice to see all of you here. So as usual, you are all your microphones are muted just so you can hear the presenters and what they're saying today. Of today's webinar, like I've said before, so if you could just kind of shut down any other things in the background that might pop up, or your phone, turn it over or something like that, just so you can take part with us for the next hour or so. The webinar is based on Module 3, which hopefully you've all had a look at and found useful. So it's on Quality and Standards, I think is the name. Quality and Standards? Quality and Standards. And we've got two presenters today. So we've got Ellie, again, who presented last week, and she's going to be quality or quality change. Which way around is it? Change through quality. And then we have got external presenter from QAA. We've got Catherine Boyd, who is going to be speaking about Chapter B5 and how you can utilise that. So we've got some good presentations today. So as I said last time, and as usual, if you have any questions during the webinar, there is your comment box at the very bottom, and just make sure in the send to box, all participants, so everyone can see what you're saying and you can talk amongst each other. That's no problem. You can ask questions to the presenter, that's no problem. We will be doing some things, I think in Catherine's about putting your little mini hand up, which is next to your green tick, if you agree with something or if you don't agree. So we'll be doing some of those things. Okay, so I will just set up, who's going to be presenting first, so just give me a second. Green. Okay, I've still got a bit of a cold, so if I sound really stuffy and you can't understand me, put your hand up. Maybe blow my nose or something. So I'm going to talk to you today about making change through quality. Spend a bit of time talking about the different ways in which students can use quality mechanisms to make change in their education, and reflecting on how you as practitioners to do that. And then we're also going to have a think about what quality assurance might look like in the future in the context of the Higher Education Funding Council doing a review of quality assessment processes. So just a quick recap on what we mean by quality. I know this was covered in quite a lot of detail in the online module, but in terms of quality assurance, we're talking about guaranteeing the standards and quality of the education that students receive. And then in terms of quality enhancement, which I imagine where potentially quite split between supporting stage and mechanisms that support both kind of processes, but enhancement is where your focus might be in particular, is the process taking delivery at a provider level to try to improve the quality of learning opportunities. So levels of influence, students might have an influence over the quality of their learning experience. So the first is at a course kind of faculty level, the second is at an institution-wide level, and the third at a national level. And I am going to take you through some examples of how students can influence the at those different levels. But I did want to just ask you, first of all, what some of the enabling factors you think are for student engagement in either quality assurance or enhancement at your institution. So an enabling factor could be something like a really strong representative system, for example. So if you'd like to speak, then please put your hand up. We can unmute you. But otherwise, if you could just put some comments in the comment box now, and we'll see what people have to say. Speak, which is fine. But if you've got any comments to add to the comment box, then you can do that now. So I suppose might be something like mechanisms to reward excellent teaching as a way of students being influenced the quality of teaching practices, for example. So Damien wants students to be yeah. Provided, Damien, are you including staff in that as well? So sort of senior staff, academic staff. Absolutely, that's definitely an enabling factor in terms of something that sets out the relationship or expectations about the relationships between the different stakeholders in the institution, what some of the kind of associated behaviours might be. That's definitely a factor that might enable or how students might go participate in quality processes. Of the institution, absolutely. That you want to talk about, then please continue to add them to the box, and we might go back and look at those later. Elgin's just posted quite a few. I'll take you through now some examples, and I'd be interested to hear whether or not you agree with these, and potentially how you conceive of your role in supporting these things to happen. So in terms of course level, we've got things like module feedback questionnaires, course rep committees, so that could be opportunities for course reps to come to input into a kind of collective sense of what some of the issues are, but obviously also things like student staff liaison committees and various committees that happen within a kind of course programme, school level, where course reps are sitting and representing students' interests. National Student Survey, so not only students filling out the National Student Survey as an enabler of them giving opinion about the quality of their experience, but also then what happens to the data, so how it's shared with institutions and student unions, how action plans are developed off the back of that, how student unions and course reps are involved in either developing but then enacting or interventions off the back of those action plans. Course quality reviews, so things like peer audit reviews, validation, that kind of thing. For students in curriculum design, we're really talking about a kind of enhancement element here, but ways in which students can be directing the content and delivery of curriculum. Student-led content or things like pass schemes or kind of peer mentoring, in which students are helping to deliver or conduct research around curriculum and pedagogy. And then instant feedback as well, so that can be feedback that you receive at a kind of just in informal discussions with staff and students, but also the kind of more formal for feeding back to staff and to other students. So in terms of what I've got down there, are there any other things that you can think about that might happen at a course level, or any kind of insights that you have about how you help in your role to support these things to come about? Again, if you'd like to speak, then put your hand up. Otherwise, comment again in the box. Yeah, sorry. Okay.
Hello. Yeah, I think you need to almost do all of this and more. One of the pieces we did was try and map out the student interactions at institute, and that was the formal and informal, so even like corridor conversations with staff and students. It's a bigger piece of work than we thought, because it's kind of it's a big mind map of where these interactions happen, and we realised that actually there isn't a right thing that happens for one student and a wrong thing that happens to another.
Yeah.
On, say, course level, in faculties within schools, there are different mechanisms, and it's what we found the most important with enabling students to get involved in it, the kind of communication and the clarity and ease of access to everything we do.
That's an interesting way of looking at it, particularly if you're thinking about what are the kind of interactions or the mechanisms in which individual students are contributing to about the quality of their experience. So, like you say, corridor conversations, feedback to staff, module evaluation, filling out the NSS. And then some of these processes are talking about how students then take on a much more enhanced role, or the Students' Union then takes these issues and creates campaigns or interventions that look at these on a kind of broader level. So there's on the stuff about individual students, and then on the other, the much more kind of enhanced collective. Anybody else? We've got a couple of comments. So online consultation forums at subject level. Oh, that's interesting use of technology as well. I will move on, unless anybody else would like to speak, I'll move on to institution-wide. Again, we're talking about committees. You then get a whole, other host of committees that come up at sort of central committees across the institution, where students are likely to be represented. I'd be interested in hearing your views as to whether or not at your institution, so are these predominantly student representatives, so potentially derived from the course rep system, or faculty reps, for example, that are elected, or do you have students that are appointed to these committees, potentially from like agent schemes or kind of peer researchers that are then to sit on committees? Is something that we've seeing just a bit more of recently. To or kind of processes in which people can be influencing teaching and learning policies. That could be learning resources, course organisation and management, teaching practices, technology as well. I think a really interesting one that is developing more and more is how students are engaging. Technology can be used to enhance the learning experience, particularly given they have very unique and kind of ubiquitous applications of technology. Annual quality reports. So the ways in which often student unions are trying to make independent judgments about the learning environment, often through something like an annual quality report, which is a kind of annual scaled down version of the student session, which happens during quality review. We have a project with the Quality Assurance Agency to expand the number of student unions that are producing annual quality reports and have a number of KQT guides. So Amir, who you've just seen on the screen and who's liaising with you, leads on that project. So if you would like some more information about that, then please contact her directly. Got the NSS, as well as that data being used at a very specific course level, is also then often used to create institution action plans or kind of areas of focus for the institution to improve. National level, we've got things like responding to consultations that could be on chapters of the quality code when they're reviewed, or subject benchmarks, or various consultations that often the QAA have available. Becoming a reviewer is is really great for students to be involved in quality processes. So students are treated as full members of the review panel, and something that Catherine Boyd from QAA could talk about in a bit, but they are actually recruiting right now for student reviewers. So if you are a student yourself or work with students, and that can include sabbatical officers that you think would really benefit from, would be very good as a reviewer, then please push them towards the opportunity. The QA Student Advisory Board, which again Catherine can talk about in a bit more detail, but is a kind of like a subcommittee of QAA's board, which talks about what QA business might mean to students and makes recommendations that are then fed into the board. But also through TSEP, through NUS, student unions engaging in national debates and discussions about quality is a really important way for students to be able to engage in these processes. I mean, that's quite timely to a national level that HEFCE is currently undertaking a quality assessment review. So HEFCE has the legal responsibility for securing the provision that's made for assessing quality, that for all the institutions that it would provide financial support to. So they have the duty essentially to assure quality, and they deliver that via the quality agency. So they decided to review the quality assessment processes. In their own words, they think it's going to provide a valuable opportunity to explore a fresh approach to quality, particularly this is a very fast evolving sector, very diverse sector, particularly with lots of new providers coming onto the scene, to ensure that it remains fit for purpose in the future. So it's going to be placed until going to stay in place next year, and any new arrangements will operate from 2017. But it seems to be that there'll probably be some kind of pilot or trial year potentially on the new arrangements. So it's already been quite a big consultation with the sector, and HEFCE are analysing those results, and then we'll release a further some kind of consultation after the general election, and there'll be engagement with the sector at that point, probably up until around July, at which point the funding bodies then need to decide if they are going to, and if so, what they are going to tender, and if they do tender for some elements of the quality assessment regime, then it will mean that process, you will potentially have QA and other providers to deliver those services. Being asked as part of this review, I mean, there are lots of questions being asked back, I suppose, to HEFCE and to others, but these are some of the key questions for HEFCE part of the review. So all about what kind of confidence that students and employers and government and taxpayers can have quality assessment arrangements, and so what value really they should bring to institutions. I've got some further reading here for you if this is something that interests you. There's obviously lots of formal documentation on HEFCE and QAA's websites, but these are just some examples of commentary of kind of people analysing and giving their own opinion about the quality assessment review and what it might mean. So this presentation will be circulated afterwards, and you can have a look at some of the links. Submitted a response to the consultation, which closed, I think, in March. I'll take you through really briefly some of the things that we highlighted in our response, the things that we felt were important. So we weren't really trying to represent a particular view about the future quality assessment, exactly what should be included, or trying to influence what the system should look like. We really wanted to advocate for the student engagement and quality, and make sure that was a really core principle that was being taken forward as part of the review process. So we said that the value of student engagement is really twofold. One creates really responsive systems that can address of concern easily, but the setting mutually desired outcomes can engender a really sense of ownership of students, which in and of itself drives a culture of enhancement within institutions. We also did not just because they're sitting next to me today, but because we really wanted to recognise the work that they had done at a national level to accelerate the involvement of students in quality processes, particularly in reviews, which Catherine will potentially touch on. But to recognise that student submission and student engagement in internal quality processes is really hard, and something that student unions are still struggling with. In terms of Chat to B5, we didn't feel like Chat to B5 is something that's particularly in and of itself stifling innovation, but that it's potentially being used as a prop by some people who student engagement should be a bit of a tick box exercise, or are not particularly kind of bought in or understand the value of student engagement. I think we said that the indicators, which them kind of focus on approaches to engaging students, could really stop short of realising the expectation about students being partners in their learning. If all indicators were just taken as a kind of sum of those parts, so if you basically went through the indicators, ticked them all off, and then said, "Yeah, we've got a ship. This is fine." We did that. All diversity of students is another big challenge, and that there are some concerns about some student unions' ability to be able to do that. But really wanted to highlight that unions or student unions or collective student engagement is a really essential dimension of student engagement, and that these concerns shouldn't be considered a really insurmountable challenge, but a starting point for shared work. We sort of recognise that a lot of the focus for new and innovative practices seems to be on mechanisms for students to enhance the learning environment. So often things like change agents programs, so student fellowships, where staff and students are working together to conduct research or design interventions that are focused on issues in schools, individual courses, or cross-institution challenges. We've said that the schemes seem to be growing in number and lots of good innovative work happening, but where they've kind of sprung up from pockets of innovation within institutions, that we need to be thinking about how they can be tapped to and become part of a kind of wider approach to engagement within their institutions. Has any kind of burning questions? I'll just go and look back through some of the comments. Then take questions towards the end with Catherine at the same time. So just go back through.
Hello. I don't know if I thought I did in the exciting video camera. So my name is Catherine, as has been alluded to earlier, and I'm from the Quality Assurance Agency. I'm going to be talking to you about particularly Chapter B5 and engagement, but I'm plugging some of the other things we do as we go through our start. I like to do hands up and ticky things and get you to talk to me, so be prepared for that. And the chat room, I will try to keep on top of, but I'm not as technologically advanced as these people that he said. So I may need some help from my lovely assistant, Amelia. It says breakout sessions, but I think we'll keep you all together for this time. But again, we'll have a little interactive session where we'll need your feedback. And it will mostly be me presenting, but sometimes Amelia might help me out, because I'm essentially. The session today, we're going to look at the role of QA altogether, which has already been touched on. understanding the quality code, looking into Chapter B5 in particular, and beginning to look at you doing a student engagement action plan off the back of Chapter B5 and how you can use it in your institution as best as possible. Role of QAA. I'm going to ask you all to play a fun game for me. So when we do conferences, we like to do a sit-down if, but unfortunately we are not physically in the same area. So can I ask you all to put up your little hands for me, by names? Yeah. So I'm going to make a statement, and I'm going to ask you to put your hand down if, and if it applies to you, then you need to put your hand down, okay? So please hand down if you knew that our logo, which is in the little bottom of this presentation, is a mortarboard from bird's eye view. No way did you know that. That's not true. Spotting it. You should put it back up. Right. Okay, brilliant. Okay, next one. Put your hand down if you have visited our office in Gloucester. I don't recognise your name, I apologise. Hello. Okay. Put your hand down if your institution has been through a review process with QAA. Couple of you? Excellent. Well done. Okay, hands back up. Put your hands down if you have attended our conference in October, Quality Matters. Shock. And the final one, put your hands down if you've heard of the quality before. Space. Okay, so the role of QAA in general, registered charity and company that are limited by guarantee, which is some fancy words to say basically we're independent and we're not part of the government. This is because higher education is autonomous and not independent of the government, so it's helpful that the Quality Assurance Agency is as well. We were founded in 1997, so we're 15 years old or something. And we're funded by subscriptions and HE funding body. So earlier, obviously, Ellie was talking about the quality assessment review, which is that funding body reassessing how they deliver quality assurance. And so institutions that, particularly those that go through a review with us, subscribe to us, and that gives us some money. Is we conduct reviews, which at the moment is called the Higher Education Review, which is where we look at how institutions and higher education providers manage their quality assurance processes. As already mentioned, we have student reviewers on our review teams. These are full, and we're currently recruiting. So you can be a current student or a sabbatical officer, and we pay them for each review between £1,800 and £3,000. So if you know anybody that'd be interested, get onto it and get them applying. Also support standards and promote quality enhancement. So, an exciting animation about the quality code, which is now going to help me set up because I don't know what I'm doing. Ooh.
What is the UK Quality Code for Higher Education? The UK Quality Code for Higher Education is designed to assure the academic standards and quality of UK higher education where a course is delivered. The course is put together by QAA with input from universities, colleges and students. What does the Quality Code cover? Consists of 3 parts. It looks at the academic standards that universities and colleges set and maintain for the award of their academic credit or qualifications. Part B looks at academic quality and how universities and colleges support students to enable them to achieve their awards. Part C looks at the information by universities and colleges about their academic provision. Section of the Quality Code contains an expectation. These set out what universities and colleges expect of themselves and each other. what students and the public can expect of them. For example, Chapter B5 is on student engagement. The action sets out that higher education providers take deliberate steps to engage all students, individually and collectively, as partners in the assurance and enhancement of their educational experience. Under expectation, there are a number of indicators of sound practice. These help universities and colleges demonstrate how they meet the expectations. Universities and colleges use the Quality Code to maintain the academic standards of programs and awards, assure and enhance the quality of learning opportunities, and produce information about their higher education provision that is fit for purpose. Students and students' unions use the Quality Code in discussions with their universities and colleges about how they support students to enable them to achieve their awards. QA reviewers use the Quality Code to judge whether universities and colleges meet UK expectations for academic standards, quality, enhancement and information.
Found that if you want to use the Quality Code video yourself for animation to explain it to other people, we have a YouTube channel called QAA Tube. It's very cool, but there's lots of useful animations like that on there. So when we look further into the Quality Code, the video did outline how it works, but what's useful to know is that these expectations, each chapter has an expectation in it, and that's when they are reviewed, what your institution or higher education provider is expected to meet. So that's what they're reviewed against. Where the indicators of sound practice are a little bit like good practice guides. They're being judged. That's examples of how you can go about this, how you can meet that expectation. And then you've got the explanation text, which actually most people find the most useful, as it gives more details, it gives you, points you towards tips and case studies, really helps you break down what it means. So when you do take the time to read it, it can be useful. So, chapter, we have expectation and 7 indicators. Each provider has to meet this expectation, which means the student engagement is part of their quality assurance review, which is good for students, really. But when we look at this expectation, I was wondering for some of you, what are the key words that you think are part of this expectation, and why do you think they're important? Into the bottom, that might be a bit easier. Elgin, why do you think all students? Why do you think that these are key words that have come out of this expectation? That was deliberately put in engagement could the higher education for various different things, but this is specifically about education. Deliberate, that's a good one. So those are the important words. A joint ownership rather than students having something done to them. Absolutely, no one likes having student engagement done to them. I enjoy it when I was a student. We only engage the usual suspects. We knock the doors to begin with, but it's getting those collectively and all those students, which is the we completely all face. It should be to make change rather than be active rather than passive. This is all it's deliberate steps, and it's not just doing an open partnership process, which is done both individually and collectively, and you're completely right. So if we want to look at the indicators. I've brought up one particular indicator. Well, we've got places of responsibility on the institutions for quality processes and makes them responsible. Absolutely, that's a really key part in the expectation. It's down to the institution to make those steps, make student engagement happen in a positive way. It isn't up to the students to do that, and you're completely right. So look at this indicator. This is a particular indicator I've chosen because it's normally one that we struggle with. I've already highlighted the keywords here. So it exists for the effective representation of the collective student voice at all organisational levels, and these arrangements provide opportunities for all students to be heard. So those highlighted indicator is to engage. It's hard to get students to engage, and I think the role of this expectation is about putting with the institution and the student together, working in partnership, rather than just on one person. Then certain groups. Yep. We've got the don't want typos, not tokenistic. You've not got those course reps that just talk about parking and then that's it, and we just put them in a room, give them some biscuits and keep them happy. These words have been selected. Next. I'm trying to engage international, and it's hard. Yeah, international is particularly hard. I think we were talking about this over. We were talking about there's the international engagement. Is that right? Yes, we might be able to forward on to you.
Yeah, I'll forward on in the after.
Yeah, that would be helpful. I think so. Yeah, because international is particularly different. We were saying about it is that international students come from a different culture, where engagement's quite an alien concept. How do you introduce them to that, and how do you embrace them in that process? Right. So what I'll move on to next is action planning. In this presentation, you'll be sent an action plan that we've created. It's quite simple, but the idea is that you would develop this action plan and you try and do it institution and student union or representative together, and it's to be as like a discussion to kind of work out where you are, where you'd like to be. So if we do this one, it's the indicator 3 we've already looked at, and underneath it we've got things to consider. So these are typical questions that are linked to it. So how far do student reps represent all student views? How do views aren't captured in surveys? How do students engage in decision-making processes, and do students understand the governance structures and where to take issues? And discussing those topics, you then look at as an institution where you are with your student engagement, where you be, and what good examples can you provide us. So, because it's not a large group, if you respond to some of those things to consider questions or opinions, or to speak, feel free to put your hand up and I'll take you off mute and you can stop listening to my voice, because I'm sure you'll be done with it soon. So question, how far do reps views? What's your experience of that, and what do you think? You can chat.
Hello, Python.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think the current representation system we have doesn't, because it's normally, certainly if you think of first year, they've just landed in a new way, so transition to a new way of learning, and then they're asked, right, who's going to be the course rep? And it's normally going to be the hyper-engaged, someone that knows someone's already at university. And in 6 weeks' time, they're suddenly in a board of studies. They're only going to kind of represent their bubble or their friends they've made.
Absolutely.
It's really tough to, and then you've almost because that's how it starts, then you've just created this model that will follow until they leave higher education. So we're trying to stop that and have a different system in the first year. So the first year is a complete induction into it and having informal ways of getting involved in this kind of things. But we haven't nailed it, but I don't think we do represent our students' views, sadly. But it's not the students' fault. We don't give them the tools to.
Yeah, also that what you're about is very much linked to timing, the fact that we try to ensure that student engagement fits the institution's timing and what fits the institution, which isn't that's what works best, but the work from September to August, that's how we function. But actually, can we look at things and how we do things, what best suits the students rather than the institution? But you've got to keep that happy medium where your students are at a time that's most useful for the institution.
Mm-hmm.
So that's off mute, and I'll go to some of these types of questions, Elgin. Thank you very much. We possible, but other students, it's general opinions. It's all about listening, and it's about getting those students to understand course reps. You've almost got to advertise your course reps, learn how to do self-promotion, something you would think. Training and guidance has helped us gain more representative views. They can't possibly, but they can give a student perspective, which is definitely better than none. It allows training and support given to reps, which is resource intensive, and the active model requires all students to be aware of the role of reps as a representative vehicle. So they might not all be course reps, but they all need to understand course reps. A challenge in itself, because the students you're going to reach are those course reps. I'm going to hit the ground running, engage as soon as they join uni. Absolutely. For a question for Damien, do you learn? I don't know what it is because I'm technical. I think you raised some really valid points about how your students can be representative, and the argument of can people all the time. Is that how representation works, like nationally outside of HE? Damien also doesn't know what learning is. That's a really interesting point. People have started getting onto about it's a learning style, and it's completely different for them. It's challenging, and actually, can you get them before they hit that intense time of lots of new information and lots of new things to be thinking about, and can you get them before that? It's LE people. Okay. David, we elect our reps, and as part of that they have to self-promote themselves, which we encourage to carry forward when they're collecting the views of students. I think that's brilliant. Self-promotion as part of your course rep activity has definitely been overlooked in the past, and that's a really good idea. Okay, so we'll move on to the next question. How do you engage students whose views aren't captured in surveys? Big fan of the classic survey. I know I am. I like to sit on surveys in a room and go, look how wonderful we are, and then that's the end of that. But how do you engage students who are on surveys? Either confident enough. A rep roadshow. Ooh. What did you do? What did you show? We had through a survey. Oh, that's interesting. So, which is having to make the active participant in it, made it more interactive and more of a conversation. I like Damien, gating, focus groups, module feedback. How well does gating work? Has anyone got a good example of gating? What does gating mean? Go out and talk, and then listen. I remember now. You've got 2 responses in a week. Well, 4. Yeah, absolutely, Rachel. I think the main thing that's definitely coming out of this is that to do student engagement in an effective way is quite a key argument for institutions when looking at student engagement. Yeah. Absolutely, Facebook, social media. How in your institutions, how are students engaged in decision-making processes? Most their opinions. Yeah. Or at your institution, how do your students engage in decision-making processes? Oh, yeah.
Hello, apologies. We had this in the last one, but we've managed to get it into the university's 2020 vision that all students to be involved in every single decision-making process. So it's in their kind of strategic plan.
Yeah.
So we've created a student voice group that's made up of 50% students and 50% staff and student union to facilitate it, where they look at all the different mechanisms. So we're having a complete overhaul of what are involved in the curriculum, outside the curriculum, inside the classroom, outside the classroom. But I think that we're quite excited about the work we're already doing. So that's what we're just looking at the whole piece.
With the review process, we can analyse student engagement and how well this chapter has done across our review process. And the biggest thing that we've had come out is that strategic level of student engagement. There's lots of excellent work going on at all faculty and course level, but it's that strategic buy-in. And once you have that top down as well as the bottom up, that really benefits and progresses student engagement. Yeah. So that's a really positive step. Well done. I'll mute you again. Student liaison committees. All correct program reps attend student liaison committees. Sit on related committee, change project steering groups through consultative forums, high-level meetings. So I've got a question. You're talking a lot about committees. What do you think it is, having students sitting on committees? Have you seen committees that work really well with students, and what are they like? And have you seen committees that don't work so well with students? The university can't argue with 2,000 sponsors, you're right. So have you had experience of committees that it's worked well, or committees where it hasn't worked well? Because there's always an argument, is having on a committee an effective mechanism. If central student representation is more about getting buy-in at a local level on a consistent basis is more of an issue. Oh, what do you mean by the local level? Committee and the student, working good balance between staff and students. So like Elgin was saying about that 50-50 membership. You're to get buy-in for particular schools and courses. I think everyone who's ever worked in student engagement has that school that's the nightmare school that won't get engaged. And they're very challenging in themselves. Is there a particular school you're struggling with, Damien? Is it better in terms of involvement than the government committees, which is more of a stamping? Absolutely. I think as a staff member that sat on a committee before, for the staff, you could argue they're not engaging for them themselves. So actually, those working groups that come off the back of committees, it's more important to get the student membership there. That's completely true. I think a really good example. Speak again, or is your hand up? Thanks, Elkin. Okay. And then the final question, do students understand the governance structures and where to take issues? Where they sit in the decision-making processes, but do they understand them, and do they recognise where it sits? Trained correctly? Yes. So if they're trained, but if you're talking about the students that aren't trained, those students that, and I think this comes down to the concept in their course reps a little bit, doesn't it? Are students really understand that they can go to their course rep and that will really make a change? Or sitting in a meeting and rubber stamping decisions, it's about doing beforehand to be involved and bring the decision to the table. Yeah. All right, that's a very good point. So there's like a little partnership. It's about having the students' involvement in both the work that goes in beforehand. Reps and how to get involved. And why do you think that's the case? Why do you think a small proportion of students really stand structure be improved? For first years, it seems a bit geeky. Yeah, I was a first year, possibly a second year, possibly I thought that. I don't think they do they only seek it out when things are going wrong, and when we set up to support students when things are going wrong. Yeah, support students are going right. HE governance structures are complicated for people who only feel as though they need instant involvement. Yeah, you're either 100% involved or you're not involved at all. And really this year, owning your ship. I like it. As a geek, you need to. Bournemouth did that. They called them the Purple Army. It was a hashtag Purple Army, and that was quite effective, I think. This last little bit about these three questions, which is really the bit that you want to do with your or your institution, depending on which one you're from. And you really want to think about, you've already given me some amazing examples of stuff that you're up to, but where are you now? Where do you want to be? And any good practice examples? I think we'll focus on two. It comes to this indicator about the arrangement exists for effective representation of collective student voice at all organisational levels and provide opportunities for all students to be heard. Where do you want your institution to be? That then not grads. Yeah. I think that really came out of Ellie was talking about the TSEP response to this quality assessment review that's happening nationally, about the fact that it's a diverse student body. In our review process, we asked for a student submission, which a lot of you will know about. Come out of it is that it's very easy to represent those full-time undergraduate students. We're really missing a beat here with those distance learners, mature, time, international, and we're really missing different types of students. We want students on all committees, part of strategy making, finance committee, really good aims. Understandable, relevant and accessible. I think a representation system. Sometimes they know what they don't know. Ooh. What can you mean by that? Lecturers, yeah, the academic judgment aspect. Information about how you feel empowered to volunteer. In the first of your degree, you might not know what skills you need to finish. Yeah, I think we've touched on a little bit about getting involved with students slightly beforehand. Is about when students come to university and higher education, they understand what's happened. It's something beyond their concept. Just do act as a guidance. It's about what they're going to learn, outcomes, what's going to be achieved. Absolutely. Really. So I'm going to leave it here. But as we said, this is an action plan for one indicator where we've only really touched on the conversations you could be having. But these would be discussions for you to be having together, institution and students' union, and then start mapping out a direction and looking at where you want to go. You will receive a larger version of this following this, along with a PDF version of Chapter B5. But just to be nice and cliche, what we've looked at today is the role of QAA, hopefully understanding the quality code a bit better, looking at Chapter B5 and beginning to think about action planning. I think that was helpful. I'm aware that it was very brief. Just add, we are going to be running some days with TSET looking at Chapter B5 altogether, breaking down these indicators and looking at how it can involve enhancement activity and how we could work more. If you get in contact with me, my email address at the bottom, feel free to harass me with questions or opinions because I love to hear them. I'll hand back to the lovely.
Those two presentations, I thought they were really, really interesting. Some good debates going on in that last one, which is great. So as Catherine said, I will send out the action plan that you've been through today and also Chapter B5. I will also send out some kind of that we have for international students, as you asked before, that's no problem. And if anything else, when going through the notes, I'll attach and send on to you later this afternoon. So I hope you found today's webinar useful. If you do have any questions, we'll hang around for the next 5 minutes. And you can type or put your hand up or anything, and we'll answer your questions. So the online discussion, kind of based on the module and today's webinar, is on Friday this week. So last week we had a really good kind of discussion based on the first module. So hopefully a lot of you can make it on Friday. Along today, and as I said, we'll hang around for some questions. We'll turn the webcam off and sound because we'll probably chatter. But if you have questions, we'll turn it back on and answer your questions for you. Okay, thank you guys.